Ladies and gentlemen, everyone is requested to please come back to their seats. We are about to start the next session. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone is requested to please come back to their seats as we are about to start with the next working session. Thank you. I request everyone once again to please settle down as we are about to start with the second session. Thank you. Everyone is requested to please settle down. We are just waiting for the Federal Minister and will be starting shortly. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please settle down and maintain silence. The Federal Minister is expected to arrive at any moment. Ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Shaza Fatima Khwaja, Federal Minister for Information Technology and Telecommunication. I hope everyone had a pleasant break. We will now start our second session for the day, the algorithmic war, how AI is redefining influence and security. Mr. Sadiq Humayun, the moderator for the session, and the keynote speaker, Honorable Shaza Fatima Khwaja, Federal Minister for Information Technology and Telecommunication, are kindly requested to take their seats on the stage. I would now like to request the worthy speakers for the session, Dr. June Park, Visiting Fellow, Governance and Development Program, Middle East Council on Global Affairs, State of Qatar. Dr. Bruno Messias, Senior Advisor, Flint Global, Portuguese Republic. And Brigadier Retired Dr. Rashid Wali Janjua, Director Research and Analysis IPRI, to please come on the stage and take their seat. Dr. Shen Yi, who is a Professor of International Relations and Public Affairs at Fudan University, People's Republic of China, will be joining us online. Mr. Humayun, the floor is all yours. Let me introduce the moderator for the session first. Mr. Sadiq Humayun, a Pulitzer Moore Scholar, is a communications specialist, writer, and academic. He holds an MS in journalism from Columbia University and MSc in government and public policy from the National Defense University, Islamabad. He has extensive experience in the field of communications and is a published author. He has taught journalism at NUST and strategic and political communications at civil service institutions. Sir, the floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum, and a very good afternoon. I hope you guys have had nice tea and you're enjoying the Margalla dialogue. It is a privilege to welcome you to Margalla Dialogue's Forum C, the algorithmic war, how artificial intelligence is redefining influence and security. In 2015, I'm going to take you back about a decade, the great physicist Stephen Hawking imagined a scenario that is more relevant today than it was a decade ago. And then I'll quote him. The real risk with artificial intelligence is not malice, but competence. A super intelligent artificial intelligence will be extremely good at accomplishing its goals. And if those goals are not aligned with ours, we're in trouble. You're probably not an evil ant hater who steps on ants out of malice. But if you're in charge of a hydroelectric green energy project and there is an anthill in the region to be flooded, too bad for the ants. Let's not place humanity in the position of those ants. And this is what Stephen Hawking said in 2015, when we did not have generative AI, we did not have LLMs, we did not have OpenAI or any of those things. Power has always moved with invention, from the casting of cannons in the Ottoman foundries to the circuitry of Silicon Valley today. Every age has carried its own instrument of dominance. Artificial intelligence is just the latest. Today, AI is shaping how wars are fought, how narratives are built, and how states govern. Algorithms now command the flow of information, anticipate decisions, and define visibility. The battlefield has expanded to data networks and perception management, where influence and security are inseparable. We gather at a moment when the architecture of global power is being rewritten in code. Algorithms that were once confined to mathematical theory only 6 decades ago now arbitrate truth, shape narratives, and define both perception and policy. Artificial intelligence is everywhere, and artificial general intelligence is just around the corner. It is embedded in our financial markets. It is integral to our social platforms. Even we use it today, with the power to mobilize nations, and it has found itself, most tragically, in autonomous systems that now decide matters of life and death. For nations, the race is about technological capacity, understanding the moral, ethical, and political order that this intelligence is creating. Our forum examines how AI is rearranging the architecture of power and asks what it means. And this is very important. This forum asks what it means to exercise human agency in a world increasingly mediated by machines. This brings us back to the essence of our theme: how will AI redefine security, power, and the meaning of legitimacy and autonomy in the international order? To help us navigate these unfamiliar territories, we are honored to have with us a distinguished panel of thinkers and practitioners who are shaping the global discourse on technology and governance. But before I begin this discussion, I would like to mention, since I am a moderator, that each speaker will be given 10 minutes to present their argument. I will remind at 8 minutes or close to 10 minutes mark, so we can be mindful of the time available to us and the lunch awaiting. Afterward, we will open the floor for an extended dialogue and question and answer session from the audience. Our conversation today will flow from the technological to the philosophical, from how artificial intelligence is weaponized to what kind of world it is creating. I encourage our audience to think as policymakers and architects of a developing future order. Federal Minister for Information and Technology, Ms. Shahza Fatima, is with us today for her keynote speech. Honorable Minister, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you so much for that introduction. Dr. June Park, Dr. Bruno, Dr. Shen Li, Brigadier Rashid, distinguished guests present here today at the Margalla Dialogue Forum. Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. I would like to, first of all, congratulate once again on this series of dialogues that have been very successfully and successively organized by IPRI and all the collaborating partners. And it's an absolute honor to be present here to be talking about a very critical conversation, which is how AI is shaping the world today. The subject that we're going to talk about is the algorithmic war and how artificial intelligence is essentially redefining our concepts of influence and security in the world. We all know very well that we stand at an inflection point today where AI is not just about IT and technology, it is not just about economic efficiency, but we are entering, and we have entered a world where artificial intelligence is a conversation about national security. It is a conversation about our geostrategic influence. It is now a conversation about how every aspect of our nation, of our citizenship, of our lives is being affected by technology. Whether we talk about economy, finance, health sector, agriculture, manufacturing, so across industries, across social sectors, across financial sectors, and now security, I think artificial intelligence is absolutely taking the center stage. So the wars that we conventionally saw, while as important are the tanks and missiles that we have, but the nature of warfare is moving increasingly towards cyber. And that essentially means that the competition is today now between data, codes, algorithms, and compute powers. That's the kind of competition we are in. That's the kind of geopolitical influence that we need to exert. As far as Pakistan goes, we all know that we have immense potential in the form of our human resource, in the form of our youth, our people, and a very crucial geostrategic position where we are on the global map. So for us, embracing AI is not just an option. It is essentially an existential concern that we have. It is a concern for our sovereignty, and it is a concern for our future sustainable prosperity today. So the question is that, how do we navigate through this complex terrain that we are faced with? At the Ministry of IT and Telecom, under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mohammad Shehbaz Sharif, one thing that I can assure you is that we are 100% committed to ensure that we have a clear roadmap, and not just roadmaps and policies on paper, but absolute execution plans to ensure that Pakistan excels and not just becomes a consumer of this technology, but an effective architect and a producer of the artificial intelligence technologies, whether it is the hardware, the infra, the softwares that we're talking about. If I look at the recent context in which we're operating, it will be unfair not to mention the incident that happened in May, the Margalla, where the country's leadership effectively dealt with the situation and was able to win a war against the so-called large country in the region. And I would like to mention here that how effective leadership, whether it's the Honorable Prime Minister of Pakistan, the Field Marshal, General Asim Munir, his command and control across the ranks, and also with the conventional war that happened and that we saw, the cyber warfare that was led behind the scenes played a crucial role. And that's where this becomes important in the context. And that's where we see that a unified effort on a conventional front, but on the emerging technologies front, really led to the finality of our success in this recent war. And this is where I say that as a ministry and as government, when we say that we're committed not only on paper, but actually in execution, we feel that today integration of AI in our security, in our defense, in our surveillance is something critical and something we're collectively working on. We also have to look at technology in a vertical aspect. So when we talk about technology, when we talk about artificial intelligence integration, while we talk about it on a federal level and dealing with it on an international, transnational forum, we are also looking to unify our vertical integration, which is with the provinces, which is with academia, our industry, and see how we can collaboratively work together. But coming back to the challenge, which is the algorithmic warfare, the nature of modern conflict has changed altogether. And when we say that the nature of modern conflict has changed, essentially we're talking about four things. Some of it is about soft power, some of it is about hard power. So we start off with talking about that how information and influence operations have significantly diverted from our conventional systems to more artificial intelligence-led, and as was mentioned, moving towards Gen AI and AGI models as we move forward. So the concepts and the media and the information has now become a function of mass production, targeted dissemination, and therefore, to compete with deepfakes, misinformation, to ensure that the right kind of information is passed on to our citizens has become a significant challenge. Now, why is it important? Because it is shaping and to a certain extent manipulating perceptions. And manipulated perceptions with biases is something which we do not afford as a nation, which lead to a decision making which is not essentially accurate and which leads to a disintegration in national cohesion, which is our red line. The second challenge that I would like to highlight is AI being a black box. Now, the black box dilemma essentially is that the complex deep learning models that go behind artificial intelligence and the algorithms are not very transparent. They're only available to the private sector and the government and the governments that essentially hold the proprietary ownership of these models and these technologies. We're talking about how we can really ensure that on a global level, and especially on a national level, we can have transparent artificial intelligence systems and technologies that are auditable, that we are sure are addressing our ethical concerns, are avoiding unintended escalations, and especially when we talk about our militaries and our national security, they are not impacting our strategic decision-making environments. So the black box dilemma with artificial intelligence is something real, not only in softwares, but also in hardwares, and that is something where absolute transparency and ethical deployment is critical for us. The third challenge is obviously security and escalation risks. When we talk about integrating artificial intelligence into security, defense, and surveillance, it essentially means that we're reducing the time, excuse me, that we required for deliberation and decision making. What that does is that gives us very little control over human contextualization, with AI rapidly influencing our decision making. And that is something that can at times go out of hands and lead to escalation and risk of flash wars. So this new challenge that we face in the form of offensive cyber capabilities is something that we are aggressively looking towards, not only to build our own capabilities, but also to build effective defensive capabilities. The fourth and the last that I want to, the challenge that I want to highlight here is that of the technology dependency. Now, the global supply chains around emerging technologies are skewed. This is not something which is available across the global north and south alike. So how do we then ensure that the supply chain and the availability of technology does not become is not weaponized and does not become an element of diplomatic coercion across the globe. So that's a challenge that we're trying to work on, whether it's the hardware of semiconductor technologies or AI proprietary models, something that we all need to collectively look into, focus on, and talk about when we talk about equitable distribution of resources, and also an ecosystem that can help us mitigate the risk of technology denials when it comes to especially the developing countries. One action that we're actively taking is, that we have made AI as a pillar of our economic and national stability and security. Recently, the AI policy, national AI policy passed by the federal government essentially encapsulates all of these challenges and looks to address as many of them as we can. So we have to look at artificial intelligence in a way that we don't look at it from a lens of avoidance, but rather we focus on how we can, in a very calculated and strategic way, adapt to the new environment and adopt the new emerging technologies, focusing on our indigenous capabilities. So talking about the indigenous capabilities and AI being a crucial pillar of national security, cyber defense fortification obviously stands at the forefront. We no longer can be looking at reactive measures. We have to effectively get into proactive decision making. We have to get into predictive analysis. We need to look into the threat intelligence capabilities in a very focused manner, and we have to make those relative correlations. We have to have international diplomacy when it comes to threat intelligence, and we need to see how we can collaborate across industry, academia, and public sector to ensure that cyber threat is dealt with carefully and effectively. As again, Ministry of Information Technology and Telecommunications, I would like to very responsibly say that we have laid the groundwork when it comes to focusing on the high-performance computing infrastructure, launching of National Artificial Intelligence Advancement Initiative, and supporting essentially the private sector to build that capability in order to ensure that moving forward, Pakistan is future ready in terms of these emerging technologies. A couple of initiatives launched recently by the Honorable Prime Minister include Inspire, our long-term initiative to ensure that we gradually start building on our national semiconductor capabilities. We've launched a 4.5 billion rupee project that will train 7,200 young professionals in semiconductor chip designing, moving on to OSAT testing, and eventually, hopefully, from fabless to fab in the near future. Along with that, other high-tech trainings that we conduct across the country train around over 500,000 young people every year, which are completely public sector funded. And the idea is to create that critical human resource, which is essentially required for our future of our, like I said, across all sectors. So future-proofing Pakistan in technology, in tech and non-tech sectors is a critical focus that we have. Briefly about the National AI Policy, which is essentially our strategic response to these emerging concerns. It's based on 6 pillars. The first and foremost is a sustainable AI innovation ecosystem. So we're trying to support an ecosystem where our private sector, our young entrepreneurs, innovators can effectively come up with solutions to our real-world problems, come up with products that can help us fend off the challenges that we've spoken about. The second critical pillar is around awareness and readiness. It is absolutely essential and crucial that starting from the primary level all the way to our professionals, the right kind of awareness is there around what the future is going to look like with the AI revolution coming in, and then also work on the readiness. The third is secure, responsible, and ethical AI. This is absolutely critical. Ethical AI governance, we are actually establishing a directorate of AI to ensure and envisage a policy where the AI deployment is ethical, equitable, and does not actually become a polarizer. While we saw the digital era being a rather equalizer across the globe, we are fearing that the intelligent era, where now we are it's all about AI, AGI, Gen AI, the intelligent era might actually become a polarizer. So ethical, equitable distribution of artificial intelligence capabilities are critical. Any individual with access to artificial intelligence is 100x more productive than an individual who is not enabled with AI. So how do we ensure that every citizen of our nation is enabled, empowered, and made capable enough to compete not just nationally, but also globally when it comes to the emerging technologies and the changing landscape of economies across the globe. The fourth is the sectoral transformation and evolution. Just like I mentioned, we're essentially working on a Pakistan stack. So we're working on a national data exchange layer, which is going to make our data sets interoperable so that we can have data-backed informed decision-making and also innovative, we can have sandboxing where our young people can use that data to come up with effective products and innovations. But the idea is that we have to then deep dive into sectoral transformation plans. We will be making sectoral substacks, starting off essentially with our health stack and our agri stack. But security obviously remains a critical part. So in the sectoral transformation, this is an essential thing that we're looking at, that how do we actually go into the process engineering, and instead of deploying technology on the legacy systems, how do we actually bring in the digital in the processes that we are performing today. So that process reengineering and digital transformation is a key focus that we're looking on. The second last is the infrastructure. As I said in the initial remarks, it is going to be absolutely critical. This is a highly capital-intensive business that we're talking about. Compute power and infrastructure are clouds enabled with AI, providing adequate platforms as services. is something, and software as services is something that we have a high focus on, and we're also looking at, and which also brings me to my last pillar of the AI policy, which is international collaboration, and looking at how we can partner with trusted entities and friends in the global world today to ensure that Pakistan establishes its credibility and makes a mark. Having said that, this is essentially the skeleton of the national AI policy, but we've already, it's not just a piece of paper passed by the cabinet, but actually we've gotten into the execution. I'm not going to go into the details in the interest of time, but rest assured, I can tell you that we're aggressively working on our data protocol governances, ensuring cybersecurity, ensuring that we adhere to the best standards across the world, do our benchmarking, and make Pakistan, its systems, our industry, our public sector systems, and essentially our security systems bulletproof. I have to mention here that the capability that has been developed, and this is also across the world, that we see defense as a leading consumer of technology and also a leading innovator of technology for very obvious reasons. So the capability that we were able to successfully show in May essentially really helped propel Pakistan's image across the world and put us on the map, the right kind of capability that we have in terms of our cybersecurity and cyber defense, whether it's the private sector, public sector, or even our individual young people. And a lot of people sitting here in the audience can endorse how in May every citizen independently, individually approached us to support our efforts in the cyber domain. So that is something that we've, alhamdulillah, been able to make a mark on, and we intend to not just carry on, but actually develop further. And that's where, we're actually having bilateral conversations with our friendly nations all the way from east to west. These are essential conversations that we're having from the highest levels of bilateral meetings, and also across multilateral platforms that we're a part of. We're a signatory to the UN Global Compact, which is the largest compact that has been recently signed. We're a part of the SCO's AI governance policy framework, which is essentially going to be advocating for inclusive, equitable, and responsible deployment of AI technologies. We are founding and active members of Digital Cooperation Organization, led by Excellency Dima Al Yahya from Saudi Arabia, probably one of its kind tech-based multilateral forums that is today leading. So multiple bilateral, multilateral, conversations happening to ensure that we're not left behind. We can leverage the best of everything that is available to us. In the end, I would just like to conclude by saying that today, as we as Government of Pakistan invest in and support the overall tech ecosystem, it is absolutely essential that our collaboration and cooperation runs vertically and horizontally across, whether it's our governing units, our private sector, academia, industry, public sector entities, departments, defense, and also our transnational partners. And in today's world, it is not going to be workable to work in silos. We are very, very confident of our indigenous capabilities, of our human resource, of our technical capabilities, but we have to make sure that we keep building on them. We know that today, while artificial intelligence poses these challenges, it also offers the best solutions, the best tools to ensure that we can have equity, we can have equality across and we can have inclusion, whether it's across gender, whether it's across our regional equity, whether it's within the nations. The geographical differences that we have need to be bridged today using these technologies and using artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies which can serve as powerful tools for equality across our nations. The technology essentially is a means to an end. And what is the end? The end is to ensure that every single citizen of our nation is empowered, his or her life is made easy, living standards made better, secure, safe, and to ensure that our national cohesion, our national integrity, our physical boundaries as well as digital boundaries are well protected. So all this conversation that we have about technology, emerging tech, AI, algorithms, compute, actually have this single point agenda of making our lives better, making our lives more secure, and making our nations more cohesive. I would like to, once again, welcome the collaboration, and I would like to reiterate that Pakistan is moving from becoming a passive recipient and consumer of technology to an active architect and producer of this technology. And with this, I would like to welcome collaborations, partnerships from everyone sitting in this hall, everyone who's listening to me with the help of the media that is present here today. And we welcome every collaboration across governments, academia, international community, and industry. We have to ensure that the algorithmic future that we have and we're building is secure, it's ethical, it's inclusive, and it's beneficial for every single individual that it touches upon. I would like to thank all of you for being here today and wish you best of luck for the rest of the forum. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Shaza Fatma Khwaja, for the insightful address. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Minister has a prior engagement and will be taking her leave shortly. So I would like to request President IPRI to please present the memento to Honorable Shaza Fatma Khwaja, Federal Minister for Information Technology and Telecommunication.
Good luck. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Ji. बहुत शुक्रिया.
The Federal Minister had to leave for her own prior commitments, but that was a very insightful talk that she has given. And something very interesting within that talk was the concept of black box in AI, how the technology that is being implemented is not understood or it is being kept behind closed doors for developing nations as well. I wish she was here to answer some of the questions, but it is all right because we do have a very distinguished panel with us still. And our first speaker is Dr. June Park. Dr. June Park is a South Korean political economist specializing in geopolitical risk, emerging technologies, and the geoeconomics of digital and green transitions. Dr. Park is also a visiting fellow at the Middle East Council on Global Affairs. She is leading a project on Beyond Generative AI in the Middle East Council of Global Affairs. She's also affiliated with the National Bureau of Asian Research and the Center for Digital Law at Singapore Management University. The subtopic for Dr. Park is Future of Tech Governance, Legal and Economic Dimensions. Dr. Park, the floor is yours.
This just works like this, right? Do I have to press it?
Yeah, it'll be green.
It's green. Okay, I will just remain here to be more conversive with the audience. Can you all hear me? You can hear me, right? Okay. Basically, what I'd like to deliver in my remarks are threefold. It's about sovereign AI, generative AI, and then physical AI. Physical AI having to do with agentic AI and mobility AI. But before I go on, let me just thank the organizers for putting on a really nice roundtable on the first day we arrived, and also this specific panel on issues that I thought I never imagined would speak about in Pakistan. It's my first time here. Thank you very much for the invitation. First of all, on the sovereign AI issue, the minister has touched upon several issues that are at a broader, larger scope of countries around the world having the same problem. which is that one country alone cannot satisfy all its needs or ingredients, components required for establishing sovereign AI. I don't talk just about semiconductors or the AI stack in and of itself, but there are different producers, different technology innovations that are arising from different jurisdictions, and no single country can do this alone. If you talk about just the semiconductor industry, where I come from, so South Korea is heavily dependent on exports of semiconductors, but the main role that South Korea has in the semiconductor supply chain is mainly foundry business, and then memory chip production. Increasingly, South Korea is evolving more into the design apparatus of semiconductors, having to do with neural processing units, but still it is a given that South Korea's forte is on component within the semiconductor supply chain. It's mainly manufacturing and, rather than design, the memory chip production. So if you think about it in broader context, say in Europe, lithography may be the main for companies like ASML in the Netherlands, but Europe itself cannot be the sole producer of semiconductors. So in turn, when you think about the entire AI stack, you're not going to have algorithms developed just by one single country. You're not going to have data produced by one single country. And everybody has the same problem here. So how can you go more towards sovereign AI? It's about making a choice. If your people want to proceed toward a digital direction, and I think that in my home country, people have decided to do so, you cede a little bit of your rights and become part of the data collection system. And there are laws that should protect and regulate the usage of data. Not sure how the situation is in Pakistan, but before setting AI regulations first, in order to go towards very sturdy regulatory framework of AI, you need data regulations first. And those regulations would lead to sovereign AI in the most sturdy manner that requires some jurisdictional adjustments. I want to go more into sovereign AI and the details when it comes to defense issues, but let's try to cover it within the generative AI component, which is my second component. Generative AI, as you see in terms of the expansion of ChatGPT and other platforms like Perplexity, Claude by Anthropic, or Gemini by Google, all of these are US tech firms, right? And they have gained some penetration into jurisdictions without us noticing. And China's DeepSeek is one of them. Right now, say for instance, in my own country, DeepSeek is not allowed for usage because they have not been providing the consent option for data collection, because in turn, the machine will take away the data. So the core of everything is data. In terms of generative AI usage, the risks that we have is about adoption into military or human life risking activities such as warfare, just as the minister has described. And I would highlight this a little bit more in the context of the US military usage of LLMs, large language models. Right now in the US, there is broad-scale usage of LLMs, and there are risks arising from any kind of military or wartime scenario planning or addition of scenarios into the whole calculus in terms of their operations. And in Korea, we see similar aspects, and there is a need to develop a model that is attuned for military training. But think of this kind of scenario where generative AI essentially is not something based on logic, but is an addition of data plus data and something new as a result. So in turn, what you have as a result may not fit with the reality and may risk harm to your populace. What I intend to deliver is that generative AI, with all of its benefits, may not have the risks resolved within our realm, and generative AI has not reached the human power, the level of human thinking or human power. So we need to be a little bit cautious when we're using generative AI toward military purposes. And I say this for our panel theme, algorithmic war. And lastly, I'd like to point to a different set of issues involving physical, agentic, and my own personal interest, mobility AI. Mobility AI in the sense of transportation. Robotaxis, flying taxis are becoming commercialized in my own country, in the US, and also in Europe. Pilot tests are ongoing in Europe. In the Gulf, commercialization will happen sometime next year. So I've been to several robotaxi pilot testing arenas, not just in the UAE, but in Qatar and in Saudi. The question I have for you involving Pakistan, and not just Pakistan, but South Asia in general, is what would happen if robotaxis, as predicted by Bloomberg New Energy Finance, by 2035 there will be 6 million robotaxis on the road globally, which means most of the, by demographic definition, most of the drivers that are doing robotaxi driving are from South Asia. And if and when this takes full scale, these drivers will lose jobs, and they will need to find other vocations in order to continue their livelihood. And I say this with full earnest, in earnest, because in South Korea, our taxi drivers are not necessarily from a different country, but they are populace of our own, and they will lose jobs. So in order to transition to a new mode, new era of mobility AI, which leads to physical and agentic AI with the use of robotics, we need to prepare for their next decade, next era of jobs. And for doing so, public-private partnership is very, very essential if and when these drivers return home, or if and when these drivers lose jobs. And I say this in the South Asian context because if you go to the Gulf, 4 out of 5 drivers will say they are from Pakistan. So let me just end my comments there, and I will proceed with any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Park, for very succinct comments. I have a small question before we move on to the next speaker. Actually, 2 very small questions, but you can answer together. One that you've talked about, the sovereign AI. There's a data bias in whatever you write. As a writer and author, I know that you can never, and even as a journalist, we're told that you can never remove bias from your writing. So there's always bias in writing. And the AI that is being trained on content, that is mostly Western content with Western biases. So how does that, and where does that leave the Eastern side of the world when it comes to sovereignty in AI? And it's sort of a similar follow-up question with the same question. That is, do you think there can be an international governance framework for artificial intelligence, something similar to maybe nuclear or climate accords?
Those are 2 critical questions that I witness every day in my line of work. But in the context of sovereign AI, I think most Gulf states that I have been studying, they have developed their own Arabic LLMs for specifically this kind of purpose in order to protect their religious, cultural, and linguistic values, which are not completely addressed by GPT or other kinds of LLMs. But the problem is, if you ask a Gulf person, any nationality that is really, really an avid learner of GPT usage, nobody will actually say that they are on a daily basis using the Arabic LLM. This is the problem because the frequency of usage happens mainly on the GPT platform for most countries, including my own. And even if you develop your own sovereign LLM, there is difficulty in trying to link the audience and the users to the platform that you have already developed. So although the LLMs that are sovereign may propose a less biased kind of platform, it also gives not such a clear picture on the terms of audience collection or user collection. And we need to find ways to sort of amend this situation. I'm trying hard to help the Qatar LLM called Fanar. It's a second version now. It's coming into fruition with more populous usage, but I'm trying to help sort of relate the audience with different kinds of options for LLM usage in my own role as consulting for the Qatar Computing Research Institute. It's hard for anyone to connect with the biased material that comes out of any different English-based platform, and this is something that you have to amend by bringing up your own sovereign LLMs. But relating it to the audience is a critical endeavor also. And the second question about governance framework, this is, to me, I'm a realist by training, and I don't believe in cooperation, sorry. But I personally have felt that countries that have some AI forte, so capacity in the industry of IT or any communication networks, they tend to have a keen interest in building some kind of partnership with a different country, especially if there is jurisdictional matching in terms of the legal framework. So like-minded countries, they say this, but to me, what seems like the case is that safety, AI safety or risk-related forums, they are a group of countries that are interested in developing their own AI models and then gauging whether their risks from those models could be prevented using what. And I haven't seen a clear result from these forums yet. I think it's more like an undertaking at this point, and nothing can be dictated by one single member country. So it is more of a group of discussion, and it's not really about legally binding framework of regulation. And each jurisdiction, as we've seen in the EU case, in the South Korea case, everybody will just go about it in their own jurisdiction. This is the reality.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Park, for your very enlightening remarks. Our next speaker is Mr. Bruno Macés. Mr. Bruno Macés is a senior advisor at Flint Global, where he advises some of the world's leading companies on geopolitics and technology, as well as a columnist for the New Statesman. He is a member of the European Council on Foreign Relations and was the Secretary of State for European Affairs in Portugal during the Eurozone crisis. His books include The Dawn of Eurasia, History Has Begun, and most recently, World Builders. He holds a doctorate in political thought from Harvard University. The discussion will be around the domain of geotechnology and the contest for dominance. With you, Mr. Bruno Macés, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm going to speak from here as well. Great pleasure to be here at the Margalla Dialogues, my second time. I was here in 2022. Great to be back. Great to be back in Pakistan because I was in Lahore in January talking about my new book. So it's the second time that I'm in Pakistan to talk about this book. Not many countries were so generous as to offer me a return visit. Now, I want to look at the two posters. On my right side, critical minerals, they go into making the semiconductors that are necessary for AI. They go into making a lot of the other digital equipment, including cables, copper for cables. Look at my left, Gaza, where AI was extensively used, and a lot of the catastrophe in Gaza is connected to the use of AI in Gaza. So, not a coincidence. All the big issues that we might not think at first are connected to AI are in fact very much connected to AI. We're at the center of many of these topics that were discussed in the other sessions. 1 or 2 years ago, I went to visit a very secretive and now very famous or infamous company called Palantir. I went to visit them in London, in their London offices. They've become quite central to the operation. They occupy more than half of Soho Square. Soho Square is not small. You wouldn't know at first that they occupy half because there's only one door, but then in between the buildings around Soho Square, you can navigate and you see young men and women, assuredly very intelligent young men and women, very good at coding, sitting at their desks and coding nonstop. They took me to a room with a big screen, and in the screen they showed me a little bit, just a tiny little bit, just the surface of what they're doing in places like Ukraine. They've never admitted that they are working with the Israeli government, but they talk openly about working with the Ukrainian government. What the platform does is to combine information coming from all kinds of sources. If a grandmother in eastern Ukraine takes a photo of a road and there happens to be a tank there or a Russian soldier, it goes into the platform. If there's signals intelligence, conversations that are intercepted on your cell phone, it goes into the platform. Satellite imagery goes into the platform. What Ukrainian commanders and soldiers capture on their cameras goes into the platform. And then what the platform does, that is the brilliance of this company and why it's now one of the 10 most valuable companies in the New York Stock Exchange, with a stock that has increased by several orders of magnitude over the past 5-6 years. What the platform does that is quite brilliant is to combine all these sources of information, to detect the tiniest patterns that can be detected there. It, for example, correlates signals intelligence with satellite imagery. Satellite imagery can tell you where things are. Signals intelligence can tell you what those things are. But to correlate the two, and so to tell you what something is and where it is, human beings would take months doing this kind of work, listening to tapes of conversations, looking at pictures of satellite imagery, and try to see the point where the two intersect, where the people in the conversations are talking about what is there in the satellite photo. As one of the engineers at Palantir told me, this is not a relevant domain for a human being to exist in. This is a relevant domain for machine intelligence to exist in. And then, once this is done, miracles happen. Because suddenly you can detect where a Russian missile launcher is, even though it would be perfectly camouflaged. But what the platform does is to detect, for example, that 3 days earlier, a van arrived at that location. And this van, 2 years ago, was at another secret location where a missile launcher was present. Could a human being do this? Yes, there are lots of Hollywood movies where there's a guy looking at a screen or a blackboard, and he spends months, and he goes insane, and he's trying to draw diagrams, and after months or years of work, he finally detects the pattern that is relevant to solving a crime. But the Palantir platform does it in a fraction of a second. And this is obviously what you need for war, because if you're going to take months, then that's not a relevant domain for war to take place in, months. It can detect these small patterns. It can detect patterns that involve hundreds or thousands of variables, whereas human beings tend to operate at the level of 2, 3, 4 variables at most. And it can do it extremely fast. Then the engineers in London showed me what happens next. Once you detect the pattern, once you know that a missile launcher is there, you can prosecute the target. The platform also suggests to you what is the best way to do it, with a drone, with another missile, with an aircraft. And it does this not because it is particularly trained in warfare, but because it has done this thousands of times, and it has incorporated the feedback from prior decisions into its advice for future decisions. If a drone has worked very well to prosecute this kind of target hundreds of times before, then it recommends a drone. So the platform goes to the point of telling you what to prosecute and telling you how to prosecute it. I want to stop here and ask you to reflect a little bit. This is what war is becoming. Now, we may continue to fight wars at the level of physical reality. We may be like those soldiers on the field, on the battlefield, that are looking around, using their eyes, using their human intelligence. That doesn't matter much. This is where the outcome is eventually decided, but it's not where the war is decided. This is perhaps when a particular outcome is decided on the battlefield in the Donbass, but there is a second battlefield. This is the main point I want to communicate to you. And that was my most vivid impression at Palantir in London. I was sitting there, and at one point I asked myself, where is the real battlefield? Is it in Donetsk and Lugansk in eastern Ukraine, or is it here? And if you ask the question, where is the war being decided, you can make a good case that it's being decided there, in those screens. Clearly, the reason Russia, and I think everyone here will agree with me, we expected Russia to be an efficient fighting force against a much smaller country, a country that was not in good political shape, a country that hadn't invested in its army at all, and suddenly Russia is incapable of gaining any territory, of defeating the Ukrainian army, suffers losses that are larger than the Ukrainian losses. One of the reasons is that Ukraine had access to some of this new technology, some of it coming from the US, some of it coming from European partners, some of it, in fact, quite a bit of it, being indigenously produced in Ukraine. Ukraine is very good at this, has become very good at this. And one of the reasons that Russia has suffered to inflict a defeat on Ukraine, even a local defeat has become very difficult for Russia to obtain, is of course that the Russian army was not prepared for fighting this kind of war. Imagine even in the Iraq war in 2003, some of this technology was available, but it took a long time for the process to develop. I'm told that it would be up to 6-8 hours for a target to be detected until it was prosecuted. In large part because satellites, high orbit satellites were being used, and that took time, in part because the American army was not prepared for the kind of speed that was coming. In Ukraine, the whole process between detecting a target and prosecuting the target is now down to 5 minutes. The Russian army arrives in Ukraine, perhaps trained and perhaps with a military doctrine that it's learned seeing what the Iraq war in 2003 was. You know that you can move your tanks and you have a window of 6 or 8 hours where they can move with impunity. But suddenly you're operating in a terrain where you have 5 minutes. And if your tank stays in that place, or your missile launcher stays in that place, or your air defense system stays in that place for more than 4 minutes, it will be destroyed. And until now, Russia has not been able to adapt to this. This is the war as it will happen in the future. It's a war happening at 2 levels. That's the level of physical reality. But let me tell you very bluntly, physical reality is an illusion. Physical reality is an illusion for the powerless. Make a distinction between the collective mind and intelligence. Intelligence organizes the collective mind that has been assembled over decades. Physical reality is the level at which many of us operate, but it's the level at which the losers of the coming wars will operate. The winners will operate at a different level, where reality is much more virtual and where reality is built from the ground up by the superpowers.
Thank you, Dr. Bruno Macés. That was a very gloomy prediction, but very true as well. Before I move to our next speaker, who's with us online, I just want to say that what you're saying about war and what's happening in Ukraine, I think this goes back to the point that I was making earlier, is that artificial intelligence is now rearranging the architecture of power. And I still don't know what it means to exercise human agency now. And, because everything is mediated by machines. So this is a very dangerous future we're looking ahead. And specifically speaking on AI and warfare, we have Dr. Rashid with us, and he will elaborate more on it. But I will have a question for you before we go to the question and answer session. We have with us our next speaker, Dr. Shen Yi. He is joining us online from China. Dr. Shen Yi is a professor at the School of International Relations and Public Affairs, Fudan University in China. He has also served as the director of the Research Institution for the Global Cyberspace Governance, the non-resident researcher of China Cyberspace Studying Institute, and individual director of China Association of Cybersecurity. The main research of Professor Yi focuses on AI governance, cybersecurity, cyber diplomacy, and the governance of global cyberspace. As one of the leading young professors researching on cybersecurity and governance of cyberspace, Professor Yi is famous for his research in the framework of the theory of international relations. In 2016, Professor Yi was also one of the 10 presenters to participate in the first National Conference of Cybersecurity and IT hosted by President Xi of China. Dr. Li's sub-theme is Rewriting Rules of Tech and Power, China's Strategic Digital Trajectory. Dr. Yi, are you with us?
Thank you, dear guest. It's my great honor here to deliver the speech. And I would like to providing a very brief introduction about China's strategic digital trajectory, which in the background of this ICT revolution, leading by the AI innovation and rewrite the rule of tech and powers. This. And this is the outlines. I will introduce first the so-called AI revolution. We are aiming at this AI revolutions and categorize what we may call the fourth industry. And this transformation and reshaping global power dynamics create immense opportunities for growth and innovation. But also it's providing us a new uncertainty and the risk or unprecedented challenges represented by these autonomous weapons, algorithm bios, and the risk of these algorithmic wars, which where AI-driven information operations can influence societies in negative ways. Emerging technologies, while has been integrated into the traditional areas, arenas of geopolitical competitions, is one of the main challenges and the risks we face in today's world. And China's strategic digital visions can be separated in these parts. The first, China believes it's a historical opportunity, and Chinese leaders view the digital revolution as a historic opportunity to super national regeneration, and each industrial revolutions has reshuffled the world orders. Those who seize these digital revolutions will rise quickly and occupy and dominant positions in new world orders. And digital China strategies is the result. Over the past decades, China has tried to build and continuing improving a self-evolution, comprehensive digital China strategy. This strategy integrates digital technologies across government, economy, and societies to drive modern modernizations and efficiency. And also, China believes a successful digital China could have profound implications for international norms and global orders. Beijing is actively involved in settling global tech standards to ensure a more multipolar, inclusive digital future rather than one dictated by any single hegemonic state. And China also believes that AI and digital tech are double-edged sword. They promote enormous benefits, but also carry risks. And China tried to ensure that the development of the implication of such kind of technologies can be carried out as much as possible, those negative effects, and limit the negative aspects as much as possible. And China's core national interest, including the sovereignty, security, and the development. The sovereignty here refers to the state sovereignty and the territorial integrity. It means safeguarding China's territory and the political independence. The second, of course, is national security. It means protect China's systems, society, and the stability to govern free from any supervisions or foreign coercions or interventions. And the third, of course, is economic development, not only creating much benefits, but also ensure that the people inside China can share these benefits. And in the practice, this means China prioritized cyber sovereignty, the right to manage its own digital spheres and participate in global governance in the cyberspace based on the respect of those sovereignty as a major principles. And these interests are seen as independent, security guarantee, interdependent. The security guarantees development, and the development underpins security. They must facilitate one another and not come into conflict. And on these great call competitions in the AI areas, since the year 2016, when Trump first time take positions in White House, the great power competitions has become one of the major characteristics of today's geopolitical status, in which the United States explicitly designed China as its primary strategic competitors, and the leading to the very negative images, negative effect to the world systems in these ICT societies. And the second is ideological framings. Use officials and documents portray China as a leading authoritarian challenger to the free world. This ideological framing is viewed by China as a very deliberate exaggeration of difference aimed at rallying allies against China. Beijing rejected these narratives, stating it has no interest in exporting its ideology or engaging in an ideological Cold War. And the narrative battles or narrative competitions. Nonetheless, an ideological narrative war is unfolding in the U.S. Converse summits for democracy that pointedly exclude China, while China counters with concepts like a community of shared future, emphasize harmony orders over ideological separations. The risk is that misunderstanding and mistrust deepen and making a strategic miscalculation more likely. And those territorial pressures and external threats to China, the sovereignty under duress. From Beijing's perspective, the most challenges come from Taiwan and the territorial issues. The United States, of course, raised a major threat on these things. And also those foreign interference in Xinjiang, Hong Kong, and Tibet, leading to the threat to this sovereignty and other issues. And the cyber dominance and China's security and challenges in the algorithm ages, including how to balance the development and the vulnerabilities, and how to fighting against the tech containment raised by the United States-centered Western world since the very early beginning of the Cold War and continued even the end of the Cold War. And the third is AI-driven threat, including the most representative example is cognitive warfare. This means the weaponization of information, and the sophisticated AI-generated propaganda or deepfake can influence public opinions and raising the threat to the security and the development of the society in a more general ways. And the Development Security Balance Act core challenges is China want to make a balance between these two, and the policy mandatory 统筹发展与安全 means integrate development and security. Encapsulate this approach. Every major initiatives from smart cities to fintech is now evaluated through the both lens. Will it boost growth, and is it secure and controllable? And the strategies for secure tech progress include, but not limited, first, the indigenous innovations. It means to reduce the strategic dependence, because it's not China's selections, but United States coerced its limitation, and the technical ban issues make China feel threat and must heavily develop its own capacities to countering back such kind of threat in the
Professor Yi, we just have 2 minutes left.
areas. The second, of course, is the supply chain resilience, and the third is regulation and governance, and the fourth is military-civil fusions, is to development the military and the civil dual use technologies, and use these ICT technologies to transfer into necessary military building capacities, to leveling up China's capacities to protect its own national interest from outside coercive actions triggered by United States hegemonic policies toward China. And also, China focusing on this cooperative outlook, we believe these win-win games rather than zero-sum games. These win-win corporations providing us a very constructive narrative framework to understanding the cooperation and the coordinations among great powers. And the second is multilateralism, the real multilateralism, which means China believes that such kind of multilateralism is based on the respect of the state sovereignty principles, and that we're providing us the best framework to encourage the multilateral and multi-parties interactions and coordinations in today's world. And the third force is the common values, encourage the common values of humanities, which are providing a very important value basis for any future cooperations. And the global security initiatives and AI governance. China raised these
Professor
global
excuse
security
me.
initiatives.
Professor
and
Yi,
also
excuse me.
Yes?
You just have 1 minute left, please.
Okay, 1 minute left. Conclusion. Toward the shared futures in AI areas. I think this commitment to the sovereignty and peace, and then try to avoid associated traps in tech, is our final goals, which this technical development can provide us more security, stability, and prosperity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Professor Ji, for such a very detailed analysis on China's digital trajectory. Our last speaker for the forum is Brigadier Retired Rashid Wali Janjua. Brigadier Janjua has served in various command and instructional assignments, including Pakistan Military Academy and Command and Staff College. He has held the command assignments of an infantry brigade, headquarter corps engineers, planning cell, COS secretariat, military training directorate, and Director Works in Chief Engineer, Pakistan Navy. He has also served as Director Planning and Development of Fauji Group of Companies. He holds a civil engineering degree from Military College of Engineering and is a graduate from Command and Staff College, Quetta, and National Defense University, Islamabad. Brigadier Janjua holds a PhD from NUST, and his master's is in Security and Defense Management from Royal Military College, Kingston, Canada. Dr. Janjua, we would like to hear your perspective on the impact of AI on the future of warfare.
Thank you very much. For somebody who has to interpose between the lunch and the audience and their appetite, it's a hard calling. I'll try and make do with that. So let's start with this short video to set the stage.
How a battle between these two plays out. In the process, we'll learn why Vladimir Putin once told a group of young students that whoever leads an AI will rule the world, and why the White House recently issued its first memo on AI, calling it an era-defining technology with significant and growing relevance to national security. So let me show you how artificial intelligence is transforming war.
The examples that compel people the most are often the munition, the weapon system, the thing that does the killing, right? And this is the killer drone, a killer robot. But what I think is that often the key decisions in war are not the ones at the very end. They're not the ones that happen just before a bomb goes bang. And I think that's where AI is really affecting the battlefield the most.
Okay, so we've made these two hypothetical armies. Here on the battlefield, both of these armies are effectively trying to do the same thing. They're both trying to somehow get eyes into enemy territory, to find the enemy's most valuable military targets, to fix their exact location, to determine what weapons to use and how to properly target and deploy them, and then to actually fire on those targets, to engage so that it actually hits the target. And then finally, finally to assess to see if it worked. This is called the kill chain, and it is how war is fought. But executing this kill chain is not straightforward. It's the job of commanders on both sides to make countless decisions, often with incomplete or unreliable information. And victory tends to favor those who can gather the best information and make accurate decisions the fastest. So let's see how both of these sides approach their kill chain, one with AI and one without.
Well, militaries will use what they call sensors to go find things. That could be anything that looks at the world.
Both sides have all sorts of sensors that are looking into their enemy's territory.
The classic example is an electro-optical sensor on a satellite, right? That's fancy words for a camera that is just looking at stuff.
They both have drones in the air, scanning for targets.
A reconnaissance team on the ground.
They've got radar, sensing what's flying through the air. The data from these sensors is being recorded and eventually is sent back to a central command center. This is where the decisions are made on what the army will do next, using all of this data from their sensors.
So someone has to be sifting through all of the satellite images.
And this is where we see the first big advantage for the side with AI, computer vision. The AI command center is armed with computer vision software that is processing all of this incoming visual data and tagging it with what they think they're looking at and its precise location.
Now you have machines automatically looking over those images, picking out enemy planes, enemy formations, and saying, hey, I think with 90% probability that I'm pretty sure is a tank. And I've worked this out on the drone itself, the exact coordinates it's at.
The other military that doesn't have AI is doing the same thing, but without computer vision algorithms.
There's a lot of friction in this process. You had humans poring over every single image.
They're slowly identifying their targets. A tank here, an airfield there, plotting them on a map, doing it manually. Oh, and by the way, this map only exists here in this command center. They haven't even started communicating all of these targets and intelligence to other command centers. Meanwhile, the computers over in this other command center are automatically adding all of their findings to a database that's in the cloud that other command centers have access to as well.
An AI-enabled army is fusing all kinds of data, mobile phone records, data from ship tracking websites, aircraft tracking websites, consumer retail activity, who is buying products near this naval base or near that airfield that might indicate activity. So you're fusing these vast torrents of data, spitting out anomalies.
So their maps are filling up much quicker, filling up with potential targets and even context on each of these targets.
A commander who sees the targets then has to decide a lot of things. Are they going to hit them or not? Is it valuable enough? What am I going to use? Do I use a plane, an artillery battery, something else? These are all basically the bread and butter of any command decision.
But this is still just the beginning of the kill chain. These are hard decisions, but the AI-enabled commander has some help. A software platform has fused all of this data together and is starting to make predictions and inferences, giving recommendations to the commander, taking into account not only the target they're trying to hit, but also many other important factors.
I know that you have this many planes. I know that you have this much fuel on the airfield, this much ammunition. Here is the optimal way to destroy that target using these aircraft: coolant, fuel, oil, repairs, rest for the crew, food for the crew. These are all so fundamental. So a lot of the stuff that was being done in your headquarters by dozens of mid-level officers with pens, papers, spreadsheets can be done by software. So a human might be able to do all of these things, but it might take them like a couple of days to do it. The code can do it in like 1/10 of the time, way, way more quickly.
So that makes my job easier. Impact of AI on warfare. You see how AI is impacting the nature of warfare. We talk of nature of warfare, grammar, and the character of warfare in confused terms generally, and usually we use these terms interchangeably. Now we must understand that nature of the war is the use of violence to achieve a political end. If it is anything else, it's not war. So first clarity is essential. Then this nature of the war, it depends on the trinity, that is the politics, emotion, and the chance. Whereas the grammar depends on the techniques, principles, as these are being impacted by technology. The character depends on the ethical and the human boundaries that are imposed on warfare. For example, asymmetric, total, limited. So these are the gradations. In the annals of military history, several technical revolutions have taken place, and each time grammar of the war changed, and each time character of the war kept changing hands, but nature remained immutable. With AI, it is for the first time that all three are being changed. That's the kind of revolution that the mankind is confronted with. Now you see, the human agency, once that is taken out of the loop and the machines take over, then this automation and complete independence of the human will, that portend a lot of risks. And in the future, multi-domained network warfare, where space, cyber networks, naval architecture, air and land forces, they all come here, fuse. And the future warfare is all about being lethal, faster, accurate. So AI is doing all these three. Anything that would move on the future battlefield, anything that moves would be seen, anything that is seen would be hit, anything that is hit would be destroyed. So that's the kind of lethality, independent or with human agency. It all presages a lot of risks. OODA loop. A word about OODA loop very quickly. During the Korean War, there were comparisons between the MiGs and the F-86. The MiGs was a superior platform on every parameter, engine thrust, height, armaments. But F-86 Sabre had one benefit: it had a round canopy which was very transparent. So the pilot could orient, observe, see, and beat the MiGs. And from that came this analogy: observe, orient, decide, act. This loop is being constructed because of computer communications, intelligence, surveillance, revolution, which is being assisted by the AI. Now, we are into a post-RMA revolution. So these all platforms will be killers sans human agency. When the human being is taken out of the loop, the humanity is also taken out of the loop, and therein lies the challenges. There's a Martin Clause, a binding clause of international humanitarian law, and the Hague Convention's Article 4, which asks for application of principle of humanity and embedding the humanitarian control into all weapon systems. And there is Article 36 of Additional Protocol of 1997 Convention also, which also asks for a weapon review at all stages. Before you plan an AI weapon system, always carry out an independent review whether it's going to be of that nature that would cause incalculable damage or not. Now there are these three quick terms. Humans in command, like heretofore, they just use AI as an aid. They are in the loop, which means they are step by step integrated in the architecture. They have a finger on their button, they can stop anywhere. On the loop means you give certain parameters to a weapon platform, and then you are just on the loop observing. There are examples in Ukraine war where the end maneuver system of their FPV drones and their missiles, those all have been integrated. These technologies are actually being tested on the ground. And we should fear the moment where humans are completely out of the loop. That is also coming. And that is a scenario in which, as we graduate from artificial generative intelligence, because now we are in that stage of AGI, LLMs, and we are making use of those. When we graduate to artificial general intelligence, when AI starts thinking like a human being, then there would be no checks and no guardrails, and there's no debate going on for that kind of a stage. But the scientists are doing necessary research onto that aspect. And then there is yet another stage. AGI graduates to artificial super science, that anything beyond the human intelligence. So that is where the machines completely take over. And once we have all these three gradations in the United States, there are labs which are testing nanobots. There's a cloud, there's a human brain. Those nanobots are injected in the bloodstream, they go to your mind, and they remove your fear. So we will have fearless warriors on the future battlefield. And then they're doing another thing, which is very, very dangerous. They are researching that the nanobot comes to your brain, connects with the cloud, which has the super intelligence. And you become a superhuman being, and that is a very, very frightening Dr. Strangelove type scenario. Whosoever wins this AI race will call the day. So that is why nobody is putting the guardrails. Chinese are doing independently, Americans are doing independently. Chinese claim that we are going for this open source code like QN, Kimi, DeepSeek, they're all open source. Americans are going for closed because they want to use those weapon systems ultimately. The ultimate quest is to go to general intelligence, and whosoever pips the other one on the post and reaches that goal post, artificial general intelligence and super intelligence will keep every other army and every other government in bondage. So that's the scenario which asks for international consensus on putting some kind of brakes and ethical guidelines. Already covered. Now, cyber warfare, non-contact, and use of AI to degrade. Imagine your airports, imagine your GE turbines stopping, your energy systems, grids being impaired. So that's also a kind of warfare because there are no boundaries between the frontline soldiers and those who are in the cities. What countries are doing? Israel has already used this Pegasus. They embed it into your cell phones. They harvest this data, SMS, WhatsApp, message you, and can be installed on a phone through vulnerabilities in a common apps or by ticking a target into. So never click a malicious link again. Think twice. And these are all the capabilities that they can harvest, and then they can use your data to attack you. Lavender during Gaza. This is a kill list generating software. Multiple data sets. They use AI to generate those lists. Those lists are given to the Israeli soldiers, and Israeli soldiers track through another software which is AI assisted, where's daddy? And then another software, AI assisted again, is used, which is called Gospel, to actually attack. And mind you, human agency goes out of the window. There were only 10 to 15 seconds with an Israeli soldier to decide or to press the button. Conceptually, they say that it is within the human agency, but because of the automation bias, they don't stop. And 10 seconds to decide what kind of killing you are doing. And they enabled collateral damage. They gave some kind of a carte blanche, saying that for low-level Hamas operatives, 100 killings are okay, and for high-level, for low-level, 100, and for high-level, even more than 100. So that was the kind of danger, and many facts have not come out of that war.
Dr. Janjua, reminder for time, please.
Okay, sir, we are closing. US is using Ask Sage, which is LLM-based system. Palantir, my friend talked about that. That's the company, American company, which is using Project Maven, which is at strategic level, and the Project Titan, which is at tactical level. Essentially what they do is they fuse incredible amount of data, take split seconds decision, take a decisive edge over the adversary, and deliver the ordnance. This Titan at the tactical level, and this is the nerve center, the command center. China is using Baidu GPT very effectively. They are investing in AI to create automated unmanned force complete, which could parry assaults on Taiwan or any other place. It's a very, very sophisticated concept, but much details are shrouded in mystery. DeepSeek is in partnership with PLA, and it is using predictive analytics, and it can do scenario planning for 10,000 scenarios in 48 seconds, what used to take more than 48 days. So that's the kind of advantage in future they'll have on future battlefield. They're using J7, J8, they're putting them to good use using AI as drone swarms, expendable kamikaze role. So I'll just keep flashing just because I'm wrapping up. Drone swarm, something very, very interesting here. Loitering munitions we just experienced in Operation Sindoor. Now these swarms, they use two algorithms. One is Boyd's, one is consensus. Boyd's keep them in formation, helps them move around, and consensus helps them go and strike. So this is based on bee nest hive concept. The mother bee is in the center, command post, all the data from the, and the multiple operators are not required. Only one operator, human operator, is giving commands, and beyond a certain point, even that command is not necessary. Then the local, they can sense based upon their local sensing and go and attack. And imagine the kind of swarm attacking your weapon platforms or your platoon positions. So that would be a saturation attack, quite difficult to repulse. Ground vehicles. They say tank is obsolete, tank is not obsolete. Now they're talking of unmanned tanks, which would be in reconnaissance role and firing role, holding the ground. Very, very important, brain-computer interface. In future, you will be able to think and the missile would be fired. It's a brain-computer interface. It's a new technology, and it's no longer in the realm of science fiction. It's actually been operationalized. Now at the end, these are the three biases we need to be very wary of. One is the automation bias, because somebody who's using AI, there's a natural proclivity in the human mind to get carried away, and you press the button. You don't use your own faculties. The psychologists have proven this. Second is the centrality of networks. You have to protect networks on the future. And even if the weaponry is lost, network is intact, you're still in the game. Interface between AI and human agency. So the rigorous testing protocols before weapons are deployed, this is a must. This is for the military practitioners and the policy planners. Strong export control and international verification mechanisms, and embedding the human control in the architecture. Easier said than done, because technology is improving continually and we need to adapt to that technology. Now, if the non-human logic is extended to military systems, the military systems and their strategies need to be changed. There will be a dilemma as to whom do you apportion the blame? How do you erect the guardrails and modify international humanitarian law? Anybody who wrote that flawed algorithm, or the politicians who ordered the attack, or somebody who was on the battlefield who actually deployed the weapons? So that's a big dilemma. Then there is a need of technically adept soldiers. A dumb soldier, Pongo, is irrelevant on future battlefield. Why? Because you've got to know the AI systems which have been trained. You should know the risks. You should know their limitations before using your human agency on the battlefield. Now there's a need for a common definition of mutual restraint at international level. AI controls cannot be unilaterally enforced. It requires global cooperation. Amendments in IHL, I've already spoken. So lastly, remember this word, recursive learning machine systems. The AI CEO of Google, Altman, I think he said, be wary of 4 things. AI machine which writes its own source code, which becomes autonomous, which sets its own goals, and which can accrue its own resources. If you find all 4, run, because then there's no control. Now, this is something very important which is highlighted. Adaptive and evolving regulatory network rather than a static. Whatever we may do, whatever consensus we may evolve, it would become dated after a year, the way that. So this regulatory mechanism also has to be flexible. So therein lies a big challenge. Lastly, you see, we should keep AI in check, lest in an apocalyptic moment, we see machines fighting machines and the human beings are lying. That is where the brain-computer interface allows the superior intelligence to take over. Already, these machines are talking to each other in a language which is their own language, mathematical. And the kids in the United States have proven that the normal language like Urdu, English, Persian, Russian, if you converse, the degree of accuracy is 60%. But if they converse in this machine language, the degree of accuracy is 99%. So fear the day when machines take over. I stop here, and I'll be happy to answer any question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Janjua, for a very interesting video in the start and presentation. This brings us to the conclusion of this forum, and before I move to the question answers and discussion, we only have time for a few questions. I would like to comment on the speed of AI that everybody is talking. Just earlier this year in February 2025, a doctor from the Imperial College of London, Dr. Pinades, he said that a microbiology problem that took him 10 years to solve, when he put the original hypothesis in an AI, which was made by Google, it is called Co-Scientist, it took the AI 48 hours to solve the problem and reach the same conclusion that the doctor's team took 10 years to reach. So the speed is incredible, it is scary, and I don't know what sort of future we're going to have for us and for our children. Having said that, we will now move to the question answer session, but we only have time for a few questions. Please, up, Mike, Devin. Please give the mic at the right side. And I would request the audience to please keep the question very concise and succinct because lunch awaits you.
Thank you. This is Mateen Haider. I'm anchor host and host programs on defense and security and foreign policy. And my question is to Rashid Wali Janjua Sahab. He made a wonderful presentation where he highlighted different challenges of this AI, artificial intelligence. I would like to know, since in the presence of another two very dear friends, former lieutenant generals, where Pakistan Armed Forces stands in terms of artificial intelligence challenges. Are they up to, they have opened some directorates, like in the previous lecture, Madam Shiza said that the civil government is opening an AI directorate. And what about our armed forces? Although we know in Margalla, Pakistan Air Force used not only human intelligence and one of the best fighter jets, but also artificial intelligence was used. So usually you belong to a former officer of Pakistan Army. Where Pakistan Army stands in terms of things that you have told, things have gone so advanced really. Are we up to those challenges, or if not, what should be done? Thank you so much.
Right. We are, in fact, using technology quite effectively. This is the age of networks fighting, not the platforms. So platform-centric warfare is now outdated. In future, the networks, and what you saw in Operation Sindoor was a classical showcasing of shortening of the OODA loop, quick decision-making, more networked, a network fighting, a platform-centric approach of Indians, where the Rafales couldn't talk to, Chinese version, Russian versions and other aircrafts. Whereas all our pilots were speaking to each other, they were speaking to the ground stations, they were speaking to the AEW command posts, and a common operating picture, they could see further and they could shoot further. Whether or not artificial intelligence was leveraged, honestly, I am not privy because these are still in the development phase, and even the advanced armed forces, they have, like I said, Lavender, the US is using Ask Sage, the Chinese are using they are integrating their AI with their hyperglide weapon systems, creating offensive and defensive capabilities. But all I can say is that we leverage this AI in some way in our cyber defenses, cyber security, because that is both offensive and defensive versions. And now Army is transitioning towards the future warfare where the use of drones, FPVs, UCAVs, and other unmanned platforms and the networks. That would be the order of the day, and that AI has great potential. And I cannot just reveal here that classified information, but that AI modules in the generative mode are being integrated both at research and development stage and actual deployment of the weapon system. And then remember our collaboration with China. And Chinese are using AI, so I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Please, in the third row. I'd request to please keep the questions short because we're short of time.
Assalamu alaikum ji, my name is Madiha Arsalan and I am a freelance writer. My first question would be from Mr. Mackes. Would you please like to comment on digital sovereignty and restrictions on cross-border data flows? And my second question is more human-centric, and I would like to pose that to Brigadier Janjua, please. So you've just talked about the human decisions and AI speed of action. So given the rapid development of autonomous weapon systems and the ethical dilemmas they pose, what specific international governance frameworks or red lines need to be established regarding the final decision to engage a target to prevent an uncontrolled AI arms race and maintain human moral accountability in warfare? Thank you.
Dr. Mackes, please.
It depends what you mean by digital sovereignty. If the idea is to remain an island separated from the rest of the world, having full control over your data, I think that's not a promising path at all. Eventually, you'd have to disconnect yourself from the internet because a lot of this data is being scooped from the internet. I think in some particular areas, it makes sense. In biomedicine, biomedical data, I think we have to be careful about that, how accessible it is. If it is made accessible to large pharma companies, it has to be made accessible for the right compensation. And countries have to be very careful about this. It's very valuable for lots of people. When it comes to data more generally understood, I think digital sovereignty has to mean a kind of an active sovereignty, not removing yourself from the global digital marketplace, but being an active, powerful part of that digital marketplace. So I would be very skeptical if this is discussed in Pakistan or other countries. I'd be very skeptical of this idea that one can remain an island. It's not possible. And it's, of course, just a path to underdevelopment in the end.
Thank you. Dr. Janjua.
There are two angles to it, technical and legal, the question you asked. Technically, we call it DPM kill switch, principle of, according to international humanitarian law, principle of distinction, whether it is a military target or a civilian, principle of proportionality, proportional response, principle of military necessity, whether that kind of AI-assisted weapon system is needed for this kind of military target. So these three guardrails to be embedded into the architecture through kill switches. Human agency should always be in the loop. You should not have an end maneuver system type intelligent robot or intelligent missile, intelligent drone who could wreak havoc without human agency. So this needs to be done technically. Legally, it has to be an international effort, regional, even country-specific, it would not matter. It has to be a truly global initiative. Everybody has to agree. And already, European Union has a convention on certain weapons. They have a government group of experts. It is active since 2018. They had a meeting 2025, July, to impose some kind of restrictions. There is debate going on that according to Article 36 of Additional Protocol 1, 1997, you should mandate every developer of AI weapon systems to embed those controls so that before you deploy or before you plan, you carry out a weapon review and stop it into its track, because incredible amount is going into this kind of a research. So that's a debate going on. And secondly, there's Article 57 again of the same protocol, which prohibits the use of AI-assisted or any other weapon which causes incalculable harm. So it is up to, and I did mention Article 4 of Hague Convention also, which also asks for kind of a human agency. So this is for the international legal jurists plus diplomats, community, scholars at the international level to forge a consensus. Already the humanity is split, mind you. There are weapon systems. Korea is doing research. They are sending their researchers to America to do. Why? Because America doesn't accept any boundaries. European Union is going for regulations. So when the European Union wants to create something, it sends it to America, and the Chinese obviously don't accept. So global consensus, and then these things.
Thank you. Next question, please. Give the mic.
First, assalamu alaikum. Hi, and my question is, given Pakistan's financial and education limitations, how can the country develop its own artificial intelligence capabilities and effectively integrate AI into its education system?
And who is it posed to?
Anyone can give the answer.
Anyone can answer. Sure, sure.
This is a very difficult question because it's not very clear to me which direction Pakistan seeks to go forward in terms of AI development and in the ingredients development for AI. So we just heard from the minister that Pakistan is on the path to developing several different sectors of semiconductors. I don't know if it's for AI semiconductors, logic chips, or memory chips, I'm not sure. And in some of the presentations we've heard in the previous sessions, we've heard a lot about mineral capability in Pakistan. These are the ingredients for semiconductors. But to what use Pakistan will put these kinds of resources to its own interest, whether it wants to leverage in negotiations to get final semiconductors or to build its own semiconductors, it's not very clear to me. And in going forward to develop algorithms of Pakistan's own, there has to be a national project from the government in order to rear engineers toward a specific goal to generate a software that is for Pakistan use. And I wonder how that development is going currently. And then lastly, children need to be educated to AI-related softwares. And that's been ongoing in several different jurisdictions, but I'm not sure if Pakistani education system allows for this.
Thank you. This brings us to the close of this forum. Thank you very much. And before we end, I do like to, I think, reiterate where I started with when Stephen Hawking said that let us not put ourselves in the position of those ants. The problem with AI is not malice, but competence and efficiency. Thank you, Dr. Park. Thank you, Dr. Mases. Thank you, Dr. Janjua and Dr. Professor Yi. Thank you very much, audience, for listening. And I hope that this forum gave you some beneficial ideas. Thank you.
Provoking session. I would now like to request President IPRI to please present mementos to our worthy speakers and the moderator. Dr. June Park. Dr. Bruno Mases. Brigadier Retired Dr. Rashid Wali Janjua. Mr. Siddiq Humayun. Thank you so much, everyone. We will now take a break for lunch and will resume at 3:10 p.m. sharp for the next working session. Thank you.